We all know the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, don't we? We've seen the cartoons, we've read the books, we've heard it at story time. We all know the story, don't we? The German town of Hamelin had a rat problem, and so the mayor offered a reward to anyone who could rid the town of the vermin. Many tried, all failed. Until one day a man showed up in brightly colored, patterned clothing with no poison, no traps, only a little musical pipe. He told the townsfolk that he could solve their rat problem, but they all had to stay inside while he did it. Naturally, they were skeptical, but they were also desperate, so they let him try. He played his music and the rats followed him, all the way to the river, where he led them to their deaths. Hamelin was now free of their rat problem, but the mayor refused to pay because there were no bodies. So the piper left, but not before issuing the town a warning. He would collect his payment, one way or another. The following Sunday, all the adults were in church and the children were outside playing when the piper returned. He played his music, and this time it was the children who followed him, all the way to the river where he led them to their deaths. Every child in Hamelin was killed that day except 3. One was deaf and could not hear the music, one was blind and could not see the way, and one was disabled and could not follow. The piper had taken his price. Thus, he left and was never heard from again in Hamelin. It's a violent story, but it's just a story, right? A way to teach children to pay their debts, honor their promises, and stay away from strangers. Just a fairy tale. Or maybe not. Something did happen to the children of Hamelin in 1284. We know this because the very first entry into the town chronicle in 1384 begins with the quote, "It is 100 years since our children left." That's the first piece of recorded town history. There was also a stained glass window created circa 1300 for the Church of Hamelin that depicted the piper leading the children away. The actual window was destroyed in 1660, but historian Hans Dauberton has recreated the window based on historical descriptions. Oh, and the rats? They weren't added to the story until 1559. Earlier versions only had the piper leading the children away. So we know something happened, but what? What took the children of Hamelin in 1284? Disease? Disaster? War? A serial killer? Plenty of historians have tried to puzzle it out, and there are a few solid theories. The 13th century was a time plagued by, well, the plague, and plenty of other diseases too that could have easily wiped out a large number of children. Perhaps the townsfolk made up a story to ease their grief. The same could be said of a disaster like a landslide or a river flood. There are also historians who posit that perhaps the children joined a religious pilgrimage or a second coming of the Children's Crusade, which occurred in 1212, 70 years earlier. There's even one historian who suggests that the Pied Piper was actually a pedophile who kidnapped and killed these children. But he also moves the story forward in time 200 years to 1484, ignoring the town chronicle and the stained glass window, and provides no evidence for his claim. That is not how you history. But there is one historical theory that I think holds the most water. In the late 13th century, Germany was expanding its empire into Eastern Europe, including places like Transylvania and parts of modern-day Poland. In doing so, their military forces decimated the populations of these areas, leaving Germany with lots of new arable land and not very many people living on it. Recruiters were dispatched to convince people, especially farmers and strong youths, to uproot their lives and come settle these new areas. These recruiters, known as locators, were often dressed in a particular fashion. Any guesses what particular fashion? Yep, outlandish, brightly colored, patterned clothing. So it's likely that these recruiters convinced many young people from Hamelin and the surrounding area to leave their homes and settle these new areas. The particulars of these transactions, though, create some disagreement amongst historians. Some maintain that the word children referred simply to a town's citizens, while others say that young people would have been particularly enticed by the possibility of new lands, especially if it meant escaping serfdom and owning their own land. Still others suggest that perhaps the adults of Hamelin, faced with plagues and financial hardship, saw a way out of both. They could sell the children to these recruiters. Of course, not every child would be sold, but orphans, illegitimate children, and those whose families couldn't support them were excellent candidates. And this possibility would account for why there was no records of the event for 100 years. The people of Hamelin were ashamed. There's also plenty of evidence to back this recruiter's theory up. Through analysis of family surnames, linguist Jürgen Udolf found that surnames common in Hamelin in 1284 still occur in Polish phone books in what was then Pomerania. And these are German surnames, not Polish ones. When genealogist Dick Eastman quoted Udolf, he wrote, "There were characters known as locators who roamed northern Germany trying to recruit settlers for the East. Some of them were brightly dressed, and all were silver-tongued. So what exactly happened to the children of Hamelin in 1284? We may never truly know. Grazie per guardare, alla prossima. Ciao. In 2009, the city of Hamelin actually held a festival celebrating the 725th anniversary of the disappearance of these children. Freaky, right?